Hello Year 8 and welcome to our lesson about the heart. What I want you to do is write the date, title and LO and then try the starter task please. So list as many structures as you can, remember that are involved in the respiratory system. I've just realised that's not very good grammar, but you know what I mean. So list as many structures that you can that are involved in the respiratory system. So pause the video here and I will reveal the answers in 5 seconds. Okay, the answers are, so remember we did this just before Christmas. They are larynx, trachea, intercostal muscles, ribcage, lungs, diaphragm, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. Okay, so if you didn't get some of those, make sure you write them down please. Okay, the heart. What does it look like? So when we draw a heart, usually it will look like the one on the left. Obviously, we know that that is not correct. It looks like the one on the right. Okay, very scary and very complicated looking. I am not going to make you draw that, don't worry. But we are going to draw a simplified version. So what I want you to do is draw a window, please. So take a whole page in your book to do this and draw a window. Make sure you have done it big enough that you can write 2 words in each of these boxes. Okay, so big enough to write 2 words in these boxes. And then above, I want you to write lungs, and below, I want you to write body. Now, I'm going to be going through this a little bit fast, so remember to just keep on pausing the video when you need to write stuff down. Okay, so this here, this window, this box represents our heart. Okay, our heart has 4 chambers. That is why we have split it into 4. So the square is our heart, and each of these little squares is a chamber in our heart. We have 4 chambers, 2 on the right side and 2 on the left side. So the 2 at the top are called atria. Okay, so atria if when we're talking about more than one of them, atrium if it's just one of them. Okay, so the atria are at the top. Now it's a confusing name to try and remember, and when I reveal what the one underneath is as well, some people get confused and they put atria on the bottom. The way that I remember it is, if we lived in America, we would call our loft an attic. Okay, so I think you're all familiar with the word attic. Attics are at the top of the house and it sounds a bit like atria. Okay, atria, attic is at the top of the heart. Okay, attic is at the top of a house, atria are at the top of the heart. Okay, and the 2 chambers at the bottom are called the ventricles. So we've got atria and ventricles. Now they are big new words to remember. Unfortunately, you do have to remember these words. Okay, you don't necessarily have to spell it correctly in the test, but the examiners need to know what you're trying to say. Okay, so atria and ventricle, if you can remember that, please do. So remember, atrium are at the top, ventricles are at the bottom. Now, we are going to label the left and the right side. So usually you think, oh, that's the left, that's the right, but it's not the case. Okay, so think about this person here is looking towards you. Okay, so you are looking at a person from the front. Therefore, their right and left will be opposite to yours. Okay, so if you've got someone in your house with you now and you're getting confused with your rights and your left, get someone to stand in front of you and ask them to raise their right arm, and it will be on your left side as you're looking at them. Okay, and this is how we label the heart, as though we are looking at it facing towards us. So actually we write right on the left and left on the right. Okay, so we've got right atrium, right ventricle, and left atrium and left ventricle. Okay, and now we are going to draw the blood flow. So I want you in a red pen, please, to draw an arrow from the lungs to the left atrium. If you don't have a red pen, it can be pink or orange, something in the warm colour spectrum, please. Definitely not blue. Okay, so with a red pen, draw an arrow from the lungs to the left atrium. And then I want you to draw an arrow down from the left atrium to the left ventricle. And then an arrow from the left ventricle to the body. Okay, so this is showing the blood flow. So we've got blood coming from the lungs into the left atrium, down to the ventricle, and around to the body. Okay, now in a blue pen, please. If you don't have a blue pen, use a green pen or something in the cold spectrum of colours, please, but blue would be preferable. Okay, from the body, you need to go across and up to the right atrium. So we're not going up to the right ventricle, we're going all the way up to the atrium, because when blood enters the heart, it always goes into the atrium. Okay, and then an arrow down to the right ventricle, please. And then from the right ventricle all the way up to the lungs. And this shows our blood flow. Okay, so our circulatory system that we have is called a double circulatory system. And the reason for that is because the blood goes through our heart twice on its way round through the lungs and the body. Okay, so it goes from the lungs through the heart to the body, through the heart back to the lungs. So it's going through the heart twice on its journey. Okay, and that is why it's called a double circulatory system. Okay, I want you to do a little key at the side, please. So for me, red means oxygenated and blue means deoxygenated. So if it's oxygenated, it means it's got oxygen. If it's deoxygenated, it means it doesn't have oxygen anymore. So the reason our blood goes through our lungs is because obviously when we breathe in, we are breathing in oxygen. That oxygen diffuses into our blood. So once it's been to our lungs, it's got oxygen in it. So the red represents oxygenated. Once it's come from our lungs, it goes through the left side of the heart and to our body to give oxygen to our body. And once that oxygen has been used up by our body, the blood is now deoxygenated and goes back through our heart to be pumped back to the lungs to get more oxygen. Okay, now we are going to label the main veins and arteries of the heart, okay, the main blood vessels. So this one up here that takes blood from the lungs to the heart is called the pulmonary vein. Now the word pulmonary means lungs. So anything that is to do with lungs, the scientific word is pulmonary. Okay, just like anything to do with the heart, the scientific name is cardiac. So if this is the pulmonary vein on this side, then this one is the pulmonary artery because it's taking blood to the lungs. Now, some of you might not know the difference between an artery and a vein. Okay, so an artery takes blood away from the heart. And the way I remember this is A away. Sorry if you heard those sirens then, so I'll say that again. Artery equals A away. So if it's going away from the heart, it is an artery. So this blood vessel that we're going to name in a minute, that's going away from the heart, so it is an artery. Veins go towards the heart. So here, the pulmonary vein is going towards the heart. Therefore, pulmonary equals lungs, vein equals towards. It is the pulmonary vein. Okay, this one down here has a fancy name. It is an aorta. Okay, that is the name of the artery that takes blood to the body. And the name of the vein that takes blood towards the heart from the body is called the vena cava. So I know these are two more complicated words again, but you can remember which one's which because aorta starts with an A, so it is an artery, it's the one that takes blood away from the heart. Vena cava starts with a V, vena sounds like vein, so that means it's taking blood towards the heart. Okay, so that is our general blood flow structure. Okay, obviously this isn't what the heart looks like, it's not a box like this, but personally when I'm thinking of the heart, I'm trying to label things, this is what I've got in my head because it's so much easier to think about than the actual anatomical picture of the heart. So if in your test you want to quickly draw this somewhere at the side of the page to help you get your head around it, then that's absolutely fine. Okay, so here is what the actual heart looks like. So you can see that it's a lot more complicated than what we've just drawn, but the blood flow is exactly the same. So here we have the pulmonary vein, and it is carrying blood into the heart from the lungs. Okay, so pulmonary vein is carrying blood into the heart from the lungs, and then it goes from the left atrium down to the left ventricle and up through the aorta round to the body. Okay, so it always goes from atrium to ventricle and then out to the body. Now in our diagram, just to make it easier to follow, we did an arrow coming out this way and down to the body. In reality, the aorta does go up and round to the body, but if you just follow the diagram and the blood flow, you'll be able to figure out which one's which. Okay, it looks slightly different from what we've drawn, but that's because ours was a simplified version. It's still the same. Excuse me. Okay, so the pulmonary vein carries blood to the heart from the lungs. So we've got the left atrium, it goes down through a valve to the left ventricle and up through the aorta to carry blood around the body. Now the valves, what they're there for is to stop blood going back into the atrium, because we do not want our blood flowing backwards. We have a very complicated system. If our blood started flowing backwards, it would not be good. Okay, so that's the reason we've got valves. So there are valves between each atria and ventricle, and there are more valves up the top in the blood vessels. Okay, and then once it's come from the body, we have the vena cava, which is the vein that carries blood to the heart from the body. It goes into the right atria and then down through a valve into the right ventricle, and then it goes up through the pulmonary artery back to the lungs. Okay, so this is literally what we've just drawn, but it's an actual picture of the heart this time. Okay, another thing to point out is that the left ventricle, so remember left is on this side, has very thick walls, and that is to apply more pressure to pump the blood all the way around the body. Okay, so the left side has got thicker walls because it's got to push the blood further. Remember, if you look at someone's insides, their lungs are very close to their heart. Okay, so the right side that is just pumping blood to the lungs, it doesn't need to be as thick because it doesn't need to apply as much pressure to get it around the lungs. The left side has to be thick to push it all the way around the body. Now what I want you to do is write a story of a red blood cell, starting with it picking up oxygen at the lungs. You can present this however you like, so if you want to do a storyboard, or if you just want to write sentences, or if you want to do a list, if you want to do instructions for another blood cell, like training to show them how to do it and where to go. Be creative with it, write it however you like. So I want you to pause the video here and do that task, please. And here is your assessment criteria. So these are all the things that you should have mentioned in your task. Okay, so you need to have mentioned both the ventricles and their atrium. You need to have spoken about the valves. You need to have mentioned why the blood needs to go to the lungs. You need to have stated why the left ventricle has the thickest walls, stated the job of the pulmonary vein and artery, and named at least 2 blood vessels and explained what they do. I've also attached a sheet for you to complete on Show My Homework, and there are 2 questions on Show My Homework on the task bit that I've put in bold that I would like you to submit, please. Okay, that is the end of the lesson. I hope you have a wonderful day.